Good afternoon and welcome to Discovering Your Big Startup Idea. I'm Valerie Paquette, Director of Alumni Engagement. I'm excited to announce that this webinar is kicking off Global Entrepreneurship Week here at Northeastern. Our week is packed full of events and programs being held online, on campus, and in our New York City community. Today you'll hear from Ja-Nae Duane, alumna of the College of Arts, Media, and Design, entrepreneur, educator, and best-selling co-author of The Startup Equation. We hope to make today's experience as interactive as possible. There'll be points throughout the presentation where you'll be able to ask questions and submit comments. You may submit these questions by typing in the chat box on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. If you have not already, you can practice using the chat box right now. If you just want to let us know your name and where you're logging in from today, that would be great. So thank you all for joining us today. And I will get us started by passing things over to Ja-Nae.
Thanks, Valerie. Let me have my video come on. Can you folks see me? Can you hear me? Thumbs up. Oh, great. Let's kick this off. So, hi, my name is Ja-Nae Duane, and what I want to do today is walk you through not only ways to start to come up with your idea, but also why it's important to start to think of yourselves as an entrepreneur, and what are some of those trends that are leading us down that path. So, with that, why don't we get started? Before we do, I also want to let you know that for any of you who are looking to either become an entrepreneur or maybe you are an entrepreneur already, I have free gifts for you. So if you want to go to startupequation.com/pre-order, there's a bunch of tools and templates that you can use, no matter if you are just starting out or whether or not you've been in business for even 10 years. So there's something for everyone. So just know that that is my special gift to you for today. So let's start off with a story. So in 1894, a doctor was having trouble getting his patients to eat. And he didn't necessarily know what to do because his patients couldn't keep food down. So he turned to his brother, who was a salesman, and he begged him for help, saying, I'm really not sure how we're going to get these patients to eat, but they need to keep some type of food down. And what was offered at the time just really wasn't working for any of the patients. So his brother decided to help in all of his free time and try different ways in which they could come up with a formula for these patients. And one night, the broom salesman decided to leave bread in a pot filled with water. And it wasn't necessarily an intentional, something that was intentional, but it was something that happened, and the next morning when he showed up, he noticed there's all this soggy bread. So he decided to break it up and then bake it. Well, he was really surprised by the texture of the bread after he baked it. So he brought it over to some of the patients and started to test whether or not they were interested in the texture, if it's something that they could keep down, something that they would just push away altogether. And the patients actually really loved the taste of it, just wanted some things fine-tuned. So the broom salesman kept going back and kept tweaking the formula for for this baked bread, if you will, and constantly getting that feedback from the customers, or from the patients rather. And that is where we get cereal from, because this was W.K. Kellogg. And so this broom salesman, who was just trying to help his brother out, ended up stumbling upon what is now something that we take for granted on a daily basis. So when we think about ideas, ideas really can come from anywhere and from anyone. A lot of the times when we're looking at ideas or formulating ideas, it's out of our own pain points. And so in many ways, we're almost scratching our own itch. And this is just a very, very, very short story around how an idea can come from anywhere, and it just depends on where you're looking in your life. So as we think about where we are for today, I mean, you may be working a 9-to-5 job, and it may look like a cubicle farm, but at the end of the day, the way that we're working is changing in a major way. And what you might not realize is that this huge shift is going to come and really disrupt the entire workforce. By 2020, 40% of the workforce will be a solo entrepreneur or a freelancer. So really discovering, one, what is your sort of entrepreneurial path, but then two, how can you use some of those skills so that you remain relative as these shifts start to happen. And so there are actually 6 forces that are impacting how we work and also how we live. And it's blank. For some reason it would come up. Okay. Well, let me tell you about what those 6 forces are. I don't know why it didn't necessarily show up. So let me walk you through them. So number 1 is the liquid workforce. And this is something that IBM has put together, or had started rather. What they did was that in Germany, they took a bunch of their full-time workers and turned them into freelancers overnight. And so now you have a group of people who are consulting for the company who aren't necessarily full-time. And so what we're finding is that larger corporations are taking on more of portfolio career individuals and using them in a way to start to build products and services. We also have the new work order. You can work from anywhere. We also have number 3, which is the connected and engaged consumer. Consumers want to help build and be a part of the process. You also have the era of the maker. People can make anything from anywhere now, thanks to 3D printing and different types of technology. Number 5 is a sharing economy. If you have assets and things that you can share, you can make money off of that. And then we tie that up with the creative economy. So for you, really looking at these forces and understanding how they're going to impact the way that you work is going to be imperative as you start to come up with your ideas and figure out where you fit in the world. And as Peter Drucker once said, oh, keeps going backwards. I don't know why.
We'll go this way.
We'll go this way. The best way to predict the future is to create it. And so what I'm going to work with you today is I'm going to walk you through a workshop, if you will, and help you understand what is your startup path, and then also how can you start to formulate those ideas. So let's get started. So being an entrepreneur, you have to ask yourself, why do you want to be an entrepreneur in the first place? And so for you, starting to discover what your entrepreneurial type is key. So here are some questions to ask yourself. How do you view the world? Are you a glass half full or a glass half empty type of person? What is your relationship to authoritative figures? Do you have a tendency to push back, as I used to do growing up, or do you get along with authoritative figures? So write down 5 of your strengths and 5 of your weaknesses, and then identify for yourself, how do you handle stress? These things will help you figure out what your hustle is and what your entrepreneurial type is. And as my co-author and I started to pull together the startup equation, we realized that there were essentially 9 different entrepreneurial types out there. So again, this isn't showing up. So there's a bunch of types, entrepreneurial types that we have within the book. For some reason, they are not showing up on these slides. So when we give you the deck afterwards, you can look at that. But I'll just give you a highlight. We have a person like the perfectionist, who needs to get everything right and has to be perfect. We also have the giver. This is a person who's constantly giving and really lives in a life of service. And there's 7 other types that go along with that. So as you get this deck, look at your entrepreneurial types and figure out which one is you and you feel the most strongly about. Oh, there we go. Here are some. So we also have the trooper. So the trooper has strong analytical skills, but also has courage and focuses on high goals. You also have someone who is like the mediator. So this is a person who likes to maintain neutrality and is really interested in simplifying everything as possible. So figure out, when you get this and you get all 9 types, figure out which one really resonates with you and who you are. So now let's talk about what is important to you. I want you to make a list of all your interests and passions. You know, when you read or you watch TV or you watch a movie, what is it what types or genres are you drawn to? Make a list of those things as well as those items that you like to do in your free time. Also, how frequently do you finish projects? Are you a person that can just, start something and finish it on deadline, or are you a person who procrastinates? Maybe you wait until the last minute. Knowing how you start and also how you finish projects is really going to be key. Also knowing why you want to start a business. Why do you want to be an entrepreneur? What is important to you? Also knowing, are you a builder of things or are you a maintainer of things? Are you a person who likes to pull resources together, or are you a person who likes to really steer the ship once it already exists? Also for yourself, describe your comfort level with risk. This is really important because as an entrepreneur, well, being an entrepreneur is risky business, so knowing what you're comfortable with and being honest about that is key. And know how much time you're willing to commit to your idea, because that will also change how you go about your idea. And once you have these items, you then want to figure out, oh, it's not coming up here either, what your entrepreneurial approach is. So we have various types of entrepreneurial approaches. There's someone like the do-gooder. This is a person who wants to do good in the world. We have the expert. So this would be someone such as a lawyer or an accountant, someone who really goes deep in a field. We have the artist. We have the franchisee. And we have the builder. This is a person who wants to build something and then sell it. And then we have the lifestylist or the micropreneur. This is a person who loves the idea of being an entrepreneur and really wants to just live that lifestyle and piece that together in a way that makes sense for them. So when you get this deck, look at the different entrepreneurial approaches to figure out what is your startup path, because your startup path is really your entrepreneurial personality plus your approach. And this is going to help you decide on not only how you approach your idea, but also how you then build that idea out. So let's dig into the idea. When we think about startup ideas, there are many different factors that go into a startup idea. Oh, and this doesn't show up either. So let me talk you through it. You have to be passionate about it. I mean, this has to be a problem that you really want to solve for. The idea has to be simple, meaning you have to be able to describe it to a child in order for anyone to get what that idea is going to be. You have to know what the market is and whether or not the market is ready for this idea. You also have to make sure that you have a revenue stream around this. Even if you want to be a social entrepreneur or do something for social impact, the idea must be sustainable. So being able to have a revenue stream so that you have some way of keeping that sustainable is key. And then you want to be able to start to validate that idea, which we'll get into later. So really, what is your big idea? Let's walk through some things that you can do in order to start to get that idea and formulate it. First, you want to look at the current landscape. You want to identify what are some of the problems that you're seeing out in the world. What are some of the problems that you have within your current life? Who are they affecting? Are they affecting you personally, or do they affect people that you know, that you love? What are some of the impacts of those problems that you're seeing out there? Identify and start to brainstorm. I almost like to mind map this, a sort of current landscape around the problems that you're seeing so that you can start to make those connections. After you do that, what you want to do is break them up into themes, insights, and ahas. Once you mind map all of the current landscape, you will start to see themes that emerge. So write those down. What are some of those insights that come up for you that you didn't necessarily think of, but are sort of there right in front of your face? And then, were there any light bulbs that occurred as you started to do that type of brainstorming? Those ahas are really going to be pivotal when we think about fine-tuning your crazy idea. And as you start to fine-tune that crazy idea, you want to identify multiple problems that you're seeing out there. And these are problems that you would want to solve for. Once you identify multiple problems, pick one that you want to go with. And then ask the question, what if? And use what if as a way to start to brainstorm possible solutions. So what if we were to feed all of the homeless in Boston? What if we found a way to 3D print food for those who are homeless? You know what I mean? Start to brainstorm using the what if. What this does is that it breaks you away from the confines of trying to come up with a solution and allows you to think outside of the box. And then focus on the one thing. Look at all your what ifs and then pick the one that really, really resonates with you the most. That is the one that you're going to lead with. And once you pick that, oh, this isn't coming up either. So once you pick that, I'll walk you through 5 questions in which you are going to want to ask yourself. So my recommendation is, as I walk you through this, write these questions down. Number 1, does your idea fit as part of an existing product or service, or does it act as a hub for other products or services? I'll repeat that. Does your idea fit as part of an existing product or service, or does it act as a hub for other products or services? Number 2, does your idea lower the barrier to entry within your product market? And that could be through cost. That could be through convenience. I'll repeat that. Number 2, does your idea lower the barrier to entry within your product market, either through cost or convenience or etc.? Number 3, is the market you're in already have competition, or are you the only one? Number 3, is the market you're in already have competition,
or are you the only one? Number 4, do you fit into a market category, or are you creating one? Do you fit into a market category, or are you creating one? And then number 5, how are you changing the market with this idea? And my recommendation is, if you're not changing the market with the idea, then scrap the idea. Many times people will come to me, either students or companies that are looking for me to invest or be an advisor, and it's just another app doing the same thing that 5 other apps can do. For you, think about what is so unique about your idea, and how are you not only changing the market, but how are you changing the world with this idea? And once you use these questions to find that right opportunity, what you want to do is you want to identify, who are you actually building this for? And when we think about target audiences, what we like to do is also create what we call proto-personas. So these are quick and easy ways to start to come up with a persona of who you might be solving for. And I wonder, I hope, oh, it doesn't show. Okay. There's an exercise that you will receive around creating a proto-persona. And really it's about taking a piece of paper and breaking it up into 4 quadrants that allow you to identify who the person is, some of their demographics, their behaviors, and needs and goals that they have. What you want to do, no matter what it is that you're building, is that you really want to identify who your customer is, or who you think your customer is, so that you can go out and do some market validation. So let's dig in to doing a little bit of MVP work. Now, MVP stands for Minimum Viable Product, or we can also call it MVC, Minimum Viable Concept. When you have an idea, what you want to do is you want to start testing it immediately with your target audience. And so even if you don't know what that idea might look like, you want to at least start to build in that customer feedback loop to test whether or not the concept is working for your target audience, but also, are you building for the right target audience? Are you targeting the right target audience? Those are going to be key things before you start to build out your idea. Because when we think about our product or our service, you know, we have a vision of what that looks like, and you know what we want to be out in the world. But at the end of the day, it has to start somewhere. And really having it start with the bare bones of what you need in order to put it out in the world is something that you want to be able to create as an MVP. And when we think about the MVP process, it's really about building, again, that bare bones structure, measuring it, and figuring out and getting the customer validation in there, and really getting them to tell you what's working, what's not working, what do they like, what features do they like, is a core functionality something that they're interested in, is a core idea something that they're interested in, and then learning from that and then building again. This iterative process is going to help you by saving tons of time, tons of resources, and tons of money. And so as you start to test, some of the things that you want to consider include whether your target audience even likes your idea. This is why before even building anything, bringing your idea for your business or for your product or for your service to your target audience and getting that feedback is vital. Are they really the right audience to go after? I mean, you may have a really great idea, but at the end of the day, you might be targeting the wrong people. Another question to really test for is, are you solving the core problem for them? You know, is this something that they really need solved? You know, and is this something that they really are looking for a solution for? Because if they aren't, then it isn't going to be worth your time trying to fix and solving that problem. And then you want to really find different ways in which you can solve for that problem. So when we think about MVPs, it's not about just taking a wheel and bringing, you know, taking two wheels and then I'm going to build the entire car. But it's about, again, that core functionality. And so really thinking of it, instead of building a car right away, how can I build a skateboard? How can I then build a scooter? How can I then move on to a bike? How can I then move on to a cycle before I start to build that car? Building in customer feedback all along the way so that you're saving time and money and resources. And as you start to do some of this validation, well, you're going to want to test everything. And so I recommend putting together a testing plan. You always want to break it down by a thing that you want to test. So this could be an assumption you have. This could be a hypothesis of what you're trying to solve for, which could be something as small as, do people like my concept? Or is this the right target audience? Break it down so that you're testing one thing at a time, and then identify, how are you testing this? Are you doing surveys? Are you doing interviews? Are you doing, say, an A/B split test of 2 different landing pages? Figure out the ways in which make sense for you to test. And then also write down, what is the duration of the test? I recommend 2-week, maybe 3-week tests for almost everything, depending on what it is that you're trying to figure out. And then set a success benchmark for yourself. You have to know what you're measuring towards and what you consider success. Otherwise, what's the point of doing it? So figure out what success for that test means for you, and then track the results. And then after the results, ask yourself, was this test validated or invalidated? If it was validated, then you know you're on the right track. If it was invalidated, then you know that you have some work to do and that you have to go back to the drawing board and maybe tweak some things and also tweak your testing plan. Becoming an entrepreneur and getting yourself out there, particularly getting yourself out there in front of customers, is extremely scary. And so for you, really sort of activating that superhero is going to be key. And having the courage to not only reimagine, you know, what your idea could do for the world, but also how it could change the world in an impactful way, no matter what it is. And as Socrates once said, the secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. So for you, find ways to really build something new, something that doesn't exist yet, something that the world and your customers really need. And at the end of the day, channel Bruce Lee and say, to hell with circumstances, I create opportunities. Create those opportunities with your idea. Allow for people to feel like they are also building this idea with you, because that is going to help them realize that there is something bigger than all of us in your idea. But it really takes one step at a time. And at the end of the day, that choice is yours. So with that, I know that there were some slides that did not show up, and we will get you a PDF of that deck so that you have those exercises and you have those slides. but I'd really love to open it up to questions so that we can answer them in a way that makes sense for you guys. Any questions?
You can go ahead and type your questions right into the chat box on the lower left-hand corner of your screen.
If for some reason you're shy about questions, that's okay too. What you can do is you can reach me on Twitter at @TheSunQueen, and you can also contact me through the contact page at startupequation.com. So I don't want you guys to feel pressure to ask questions as you start to digest.
Today we have a question that just came in. We have actually that's two. They're starting to come in. So our first question is, how well does this translate into a service business, such as engineering?
I think it depends on, so that's a pretty broad question, and I'm not necessarily sure what the question is within there. I mean, no matter if you are looking to create something new within engineering or within a type of engineering, and you're looking to be a consultant, or if you are looking to create, say, a new product or a new tech within engineering, absolutely utilize these exercises and do MVC and MVP testing with your potential target audience. And the reason why is, one, you need to know whether or not this is something that they want. Two, you need to know if you're actually targeting that right audience. Three, you need to know whether what you're building is something that they will pay for. So building in a customer feedback loop, whether this is a product or a service or a social enterprise, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're a lawyer or an accountant, or even if you're, say, a freelancer who is offering up services. Knowing who your target audience is and what you're trying to offer them and getting that feedback even before you start to build out your idea is
someone with
vital.
a similar question around not-for-profit organizations. Is this something that's applicable for that too?
This is for any business, for any type of idea, getting that customer validation as soon as possible so that you're not wasting time and money and resources. And particularly for non-for-profits or even for startups, I mean, you don't have many startups that I know and many entrepreneurs that I know do not have thousands and thousands of dollars to waste to build something out that isn't wanted or isn't needed and doesn't really solve for a core problem out there. So doing that type of validation work repeatedly is vital.
Question, and someone is asking, what are good ways to get support for yourself when you're in the startup phase?
That's a good question. So if you already have a solution and you are building it out, it really depends on what it is that you are doing. So, you know, it may make sense for you to bootstrap it and bootstrap the entire thing. It may make sense to get a friends and family round. So say that you were starting a food truck. And you really needed about, say, $50K worth of investment. That's where a friends and family round might come in. Those who immediately think that venture capital is the first path to go, any VC is going to tell you that you need to get traction first and show that you have traction before you go and raise a bunch of money. So finding those ways to do so, and even if you're doing it through crowdfunding, you know, crowdfunding is also a really great way to do an MVP or a minimum viable concept. One, because you're testing communication about your product or service. Two, you're testing whether or not there's a need or a want for your product or service. And you're also testing whether or not the price point works for your product or service. So again, find ways to pull that traction together for you depending on the type of idea or business that you have.
Great. We have another question. Someone has written, you had a couple of concepts that were defined almost opposite of what they usually hear. Interesting, sounded appropriate, but we need to see slides to remember what struck me.
Well, we will be sending a PDF version of those slides, and again, we apologize, so that you can see what those slides were. Also, within the Startup Launch Kit, if you download, again, if you go to startup.com/pre-order, most of those slides are within the pre-order package, and along with that you have about 27 different templates that you can use, so a lot of goodies. So either way, we'll make sure you get those slides.
Someone has asked, how can you use validation to build your team? For example, if the solution requires additional tools or professionals that are not part of your team.
So that's a good question. You know, I always look at team building separately from validation, and I do team validation instead. Really understanding the skill set that you need on your team, particularly on your core team. So when we think about team, we think about core members, and these are usually the co-founders, individuals who have varying skill sets that complement one another, but are individuals who are truly invested in time and in risk into building out this business. But then you have your extended team. So these could be advisors, these could be mentors, these can be partners. So I think for you, it's understanding, who do I need on my core team? And then if we need additional resources to build out our product or service, can we get that through, say, a partner or a joint venture, or through just outsourcing that work to consultants or to a subcontractor? That looks very different for every company. So it's really about what makes sense for you, your budget, and how much of the company / how much of the idea are you looking to give away or share with people.
Wonderful, thank you. We don't see any additional questions coming through. Oh, we might have one more. We'll just wait one moment. If anybody has any final questions, you can enter them now, and then we'll be wrapping up.
Great. So with that, feel free to reach out. More than happy to ask.
Yes.
We
So
have
one final question. The last question is regarding getting all the adequate paperwork for your organization or entity. And they're asking how they would go about doing that.
Yeah, so I recommend if you are talking about formulating or legalizing your entity, I recommend going and talking to a lawyer who works with startups specifically. So whether or not we're talking about setting up your entity, really looking at your intellectual property, looking at trademarking, working with a lawyer to figure out what your checklist needs to be is key, because everyone, again, is very different. Here in Massachusetts, a partner of ours is New Leaf Legal. They are great. If you're a student of Northeastern and you're a part of this webinar, the IP Collab, I think that's what it's called, is fantastic out of the law school, and they're more than happy to help you. So there are there are resources for students here at Northeastern, but then also there are some great folks out there who specialize within law. So again, depending on what you need, the areas of entity, IP, and trademark will probably be some of your first priorities. So working with a lawyer around that and just packaging that up and starting your business is the way to go. So reach out to someone who specializes in that.
Thank you very much, Ja-Nae. This was a very informative webinar. I wanted to also thank everybody that joined us today. Please be sure to visit the Alumni website. We have so many more exciting programs around entrepreneur and career programming, so definitely take a look at that. Also, we have Global Entrepreneurship Week going on all week this week, so virtual networking on Wednesday, as well as many programs held on campus and also in our New York community. We definitely appreciate any and all feedback that you have on our program, so we'll be following up with a survey, and always feel free to reach out to us with any additional questions or ideas that you have. We'll be sending along Ja-Nae's slides, and also you can feel free. Ja-Nae's information is right on the screen to reach out to her as well with questions. Right. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day. Right. Thank you very much.